Right, so I've probably just been introduced. You know I'm a game designer. So what does a game designer actually do, and why am I telling you? Well, I'm guessing that in the audience here, there's some people who are interested in video games. Probably a surprise, given the rest of the events that have been on tonight. And I'm guessing there are probably some of you who are either making games, or would love to be making games, have a passion to make games maybe. And maybe you're interested in design as well. So who am I? I'm Dean, professional game designer. I work at Chaos Theory Games, working in a studio environment, right? So I'm a designer working with artists, producers, and developers, usually in small teams. So I'm kind of stressing this point here as I just want you to know the context of a lot of what I'm going to be talking about here is that I'm working with a team. I'm not, an independent developer. I'm kind of building everything on my own. All right, so what do I do day to day, or what is game design? Well, firstly, it's different at every studio. And it's different on every project and game as well. You're going to be asked to do more or less. There's also a lot of specialization in design. You could specialize in being a level designer, sort of creating spaces, being a systems designer, coming up with how some of these systems work, or if your game's having people level up, then how quickly you're leveling up, and maybe you're a currency designer. How much gold are we getting? What can we trade? Things like this. You are often thinking about very different things. The big picture, what is this whole game that we're building? But also very small details. And I think that design really is, 80% of this is about two things. One is the coming up with ideas. It's probably what you all have in mind. Game designers are the ideas people, come up with ideas. Yep, sure. But also, and probably more importantly, communicating ideas. So ideation, the idea of coming up with ideas, there's a lot to consider. Some of the things we consider, when building a game might be, what are our player experience verbs? What are the things that we want our player to be doing in our game? And we might be thinking about a player persona, so who are we making this game for? Now, there's plenty of other things that we can be thinking about and considering. Obviously, are we making this game for console or PC or mobile? And then, hey, well, sitting down to play a game at your PC for, a couple of hours is probably different to pulling out your mobile phone and opening up a game while waiting for a bus. So plenty of considerations there. But yeah, you can see there's a lot of different lenses you can come at this from. But here's two that we're going to look at today. So just, designing a game out of thin air. We might think, what are the players going to be doing in this game? So are we going to be shooting, jumping, exploring, talking, investigating, discovering? We could be conversing. We could be growing and developing, leveling up. Some of these things are more obvious than others. You might say, well, shooting's it's like an obvious mechanic, like leveling up. Well, that's probably going to be part of the game, but is it so obvious? I'm not really so concerned by that. It's just a useful exploration to start to ground the experiences the player's going to have. And from here, we might say what are two that we like. Shooting and investigating. So you might, from there, start envisioning, what are some of the experiences that the player might have? Well, we might go from an investigation and some event seems to go wrong, and suddenly now we're in a shootout. So you can start to develop a sense of, the kind of things your player will be doing. And as you're thinking that, okay, well, investigation turns into a shootout. How can I make that interesting? Is that the kind of thing that I want to make? And is that the kind of thing that's going to be compelling to players? So, speaking of players, one general piece of advice, and I think for early stage developers or people just wanting to enter the game development or game design journey, it might sound contradictory because well and truly I think you need to have passion. You need to be motivated, particularly early in your career, by a passion to make games and to see things move on screen and to know that you're responsible for that. But one piece of general advice that I try to give to everyone is never make games for yourself. you should be making games for an audience. And that might sound a little bit boring, and I'll kind of return back to that in a moment. There is kind of a bit of mental gymnastics that I think you should be doing as well. But so, okay, right, never make a game for myself, always make a game for an audience. So sometimes the difference between a game and a good game, well, what is a good game? A good game simply might be one that is made for a lot of people. Lots of people bought this and enjoyed it because it was made to the tastes and preferences and desires and whatnot of a lot of people. So that's one way to consider a good game. But right, let's just have some fun. We're not trying to take over the world here, we're just trying to make our first game, maybe. So why can't I make a game for myself? Well, let's just think a little bit harder and dig a little bit deeper. So, you know, I'm Dean, and, well, I don't want to make a game for me, but I do well and truly want to make the game that I want to make the game that I want to play. What do I like? Well, I like action games, and okay, cool. So I'm no longer making a game for Dean. I'm making a game for gamers who like action games. What else? So I like gothic themes. So I'm now making a game for gamers who like action games with gothic themes. What else you might want to, add to that list and start developing your persona. So suddenly now we're not talking about Dean, me, we're not up to my whims. We're talking about our persona of our audience or expected player. This is a really good practice. And yeah, it helps a lot in a lot of ways, but one of them is like, removing your whims from it, the process of writing this stuff down, saying, here's what we're targeting, an action game gothic, like helps you understand what you're building, and can act as a kind of guide along the way. As a designer, or anyone really, you're going to be making a lot of decisions, big ones, small ones, and every time you're making one of these decisions, it helps to be able to look at this bit of paper and say, well, should I have less combat or more? Well, it says action game here, so maybe more combat leads closer towards action game, which we're saying is what our audience is looking for, expecting. Wonderful. So that's a little bit around some of the ways that we can be ideating and coming up with game ideas. Great, now we've got to communicate those ideas. An idea is nothing if it cannot be shared. And so two ways that we can share an idea that we're going to look at today that use professionally is our design documentation, or our game design document, and also a game prototype. So the idea of building the game, or a small version of the game, or a really janky, hard to play without help version of the game, or even building a slightly less interactive version of the game. These are ways that we can communicate. Cool, so to recap, if we imagine we might be building our first game, right now someone asks us about it, we can communicate a bit. We can tell you that it's an action game with a gothic theme, where players spend their time shooting and investigating. Very exciting, right? Nailed it. But we might hear questions like, well, sounds great, Dean, you're a genius, amazing, but how does that combat work? Are there levels? Is it open world? How do I investigate? Do I have a lot of weapons? Just one? Does the weapon have upgrades? 1,000 questions. Now, if we're the kind of person that holds a strong vision and we do that well in our head, we can probably answer these questions. And if we're a slightly more organized person, maybe then we write those answers down. Let's document them again. We've decided on these things, so let's kind of write it down and document it. And if we're doing this professionally, probably before we've been asked these questions, we've been maintaining a game design document where we're thinking through a little bit deeper and coming up with some of these answers and systems before people ask. And that's great, because now I can turn around and say, well, you've got all these questions and I can answer them. Here they are in this 60-page document. Good luck. Buried in there is the answer to every question you could ever have about the game that we're going to build. Off you go. So that's game design documents, and they're a good start. What I'm trying to communicate with my silly example there is that they can get very large very quickly. I use 60 pages as an example because for some reason that seems to be where a lot of my documents land when I write game design documents. It's very easy the moment you start deciding to capture detail in words. You've kind of committed yourself to capturing detail across the board, and they can get unwieldy very quickly. You could have every answer you ever want inside this document, but it's got to take commitment from someone to want to read through that. Thinking about audience or players again, who are you communicating this to? Maybe now, when you're just developing the idea, you're communicating with friends. Friends probably love you, but do you think they're going to take the time, all of them, many of them, to read through your 60-page document? Kind of as a general rule, these documents can become less useful with more detail. So in practice, you kind of want to split those up if you are going to do big documents like this. Now, while you're working with a team, this document can still be useful, but again, you've got the same issues where commitment's required and things like this. And one way to mitigate and support this document is, hey, be the game designer. So another thing the game designer does is what we're talking about now, communication, but doing so in the way I'm communicating with you, using my words and my voice. One way to, mitigate the unwieldyliness of a design document is have a designer around. Your developer can come and say, how does this work? And you can answer them rather than requiring them to dive into that document. And in that case, your design document basically becomes a place for the designers to remain consistent, but still be engaging with the team like that. So at the complete other end of the spectrum is prototyping, or, and again, this is good general advice, just make it, just build the game. The best way to communicate the design of a game is to put it in the hands of someone, give them the controller, play it. How does the combat work? There you go. Look, I'll make a point of stepping here. We're talking about different ways of communicating, but really I want to introduce a lesson or some specific advice for people who are aspiring designers or aspiring to make games. And, this design thing sounds interesting, coming up with ideas, talking to people, having soft skills and stuff like that. Right here, this is your number one piece of advice, like anywhere in your career, just make it, build games. If you've never made a game before, step one is to make a game. We're talking about design here. Very much I advocate for early stage in career. Designers need a hard skill. I recommend learning to code. You don't need to learn to code well. You just need to learn to code well enough to make things move on screen. You never need to have your code integrated with professional coders or anything like that, so you can keep the curtain there, or the little iron curtain between your little messing around code and professional code if you end up working with professional developers. But as a way of being able to express yourself as a designer, I think being able to do is just extremely important. You might imagine early stage career artist. Well, when they don't have a team, an artist can still create wonderful works and demonstrate their skills. As a designer without a team, maybe you can be creating documents. Fine when you've got a team. We've spoken about some of the issues with design documentation, become overwhelming, things like this. But when you've got a team, if that's the best you can do, that's the best you can do. You can put that to them, a good team can work with that. Without a team, if you're a designer that's working independently, or, you're making your first game, it really is vital that you can do more than just create that document. Ultimately, when we make games, what are we making? Well, we're making player experiences. Games are inherently interactive, and that's obvious, but when I say inherently interactive, I mean interactive in the sense that we as designers and developers create a game and we put that out into the world, and players have experiences with that game. It is an interaction, a cooperation maybe, between literally me and what I've designed and someone else as the player. Interacting, they prod the system and the system prods back. This is all just a long way of saying that a game isn't, we don't make games, we make player experiences. Until a player is in that loop, until a player is touching your game, you haven't made anything. If a game falls in the woods and there's no one around to, if a game releases in the woods and there's no one around to play it, was it released at all? Right, so let's say that your ears are pricking up at some of that because maybe you are interested in making a game. Well, I'd say to you, get your phones out and prepare to take photos of the next slide. It's not pretty, but It's got some real primers and useful bits of information for you. So if you're interested in design, maybe you're thinking about making your first game, you would love to, but you've got absolutely no idea how. Let's have a look at some of this. So I think I've probably got about 4 minutes to keep going. Right, I guess if you have a burn... No, I'm not going to do questions. What are we looking at here? We're looking at some important things that you need to consider. You want to make a game? Well, step one is not be overwhelmed by the amount of text and stuff on here. Take a photo. There's some valuable stuff here. You're going to need an inquisitive mind. But important things to know about. Game engines. Not the world's most important decision, because you can very easily change game engines and, learn a different one, things like that. Unity is a very popular engine, and it's somewhat of an industry standard. If you want to do professional development, game development, there are, 80% of places, 70% of places will see your skills and experience with Unity as a valuable asset. Scratch and Construct 3 are simpler engines to work with. You're not going to be making final and professional works, but you should, at this point, if this slides for you, if you're pulling your cameras out, you should be passionate about making games and motivated and excited right now, excited about the prospect of seeing a thing on screen, pushing a button, seeing that thing respond to you, making something happen on screen that you can touch and play with, and maybe even get your friends and family to touch and play with as well. That's what needs to be driving you. So Scratch and Construct are great entryways there. Unity is a great place to go next, or just dive in there. Distribution, probably putting the cart before the horse a little bit here. It's great that you can jump in today with Unity, Scratch and Construct, make a little game with your screen, start playing on your keyboard. Hey mum, come and look at this. She can start bashing on your keyboard too. But say you want to, share it with the world. Send that to your friends. Here's a link in Messenger. Play my game, or fucking TikTok. Here you go. Play my cool new hit game. Whatever. Itch.io. That's basically what I want to draw your attention to here. Great little place, free, and we'll let you, if you're working Unity, Scratch, Construct, upload your game, so you can send a link to people and say, here you go, have a look. It's also got all the social stuff where you can be getting stars and likes and all that kind of stuff as well. The other options that aren't as scary as they might sound is you can get games on Steam. If you're more into phones and things like that, which I spend a lot of my time doing, App Store, perfectly valid. App Store would probably cost you, $200 to get yourself all set up, and like $100 yearly. 400, let's say that, $400 a year, and you can make games on the App Store like all the other terrible games you see on the App Store. Maybe you'll make a good one. So how to get started. Pick an engine. Just pick one. You can change your mind later, and you probably should. It's good. Explore the provided examples. All of these will have examples, will have other people's projects. Open them up, click them, play them, see what happens. Oh, this one's Pac-Man. Oh, I wonder how they get the fucking Pac-Man to go up and down. I wonder how they get the puck to disappear, the pills to disappear when he goes over them. Jump in, fiddle your way through, learn a little bit. Tweak some things. Let's make Pac-Man go faster or slower. You're going to find the support forums. Now, if you're in New South Wales and you want to develop games, we have the Games with Wings Discord. Take your photo, go to this URL, join Games with Wings Discord. That's a Discord that when I am not too anxious to go online, help manage. Good community there. People will help you get set up building games. And Google is your friend. Get very familiar with Google. Understand how to type. Unity, make a character move. Unity, how to put cube in scene. Learn how to Google. It's basically put your engine name and your problem, and then learn how to look for your answers. You're then going to start small and create your first interaction. So you're going to make a cube jump or shoot or move or a spaceship that can spin around or whatever crazy little thing that you want. You're going to be passionate and motivated and excited about making that one little thing happen. You did that, and you look at your screen and you tap the space bar and your little cube does whatever it is that you've told it to do. That's going to be a very exciting moment for you. You're then going to build on that simple interaction. How much detail can I go into here? None at all. You're going to build on that simple interaction. You're going to do things like, right, well, if I've got this little spaceship that can move left and right, now we're going to make that spaceship able to shoot as well. Maybe we want to have something shoot back. It's probably important that our player can die and have to restart. Yeah, that's kind of like a game. And let's get a score going as well.
So now I've got a score, like a way to measure how well the player's doing, and my player can die, and there we go, we've got our little game. So you can build this interaction to make your first game. Wonderful. So that's me waving and about to walk off stage, I guess. Awkward way to finish up. Great, thank you all very much for your time. Track me down or not, that's all up to you. But hey, go and make games. I want to play more games that are made locally and nearby. And you know, it would be a real pleasure if in some amount of time I'm able to play games by people who are in this room. That would be great. So I don't know, do me that favor. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody. The end.